Howdy, 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 back at it again. Today's video is going to go over Marisa's general ground game plan in neutral. Before we get into that though, I want to say if you like this type of content, if you find it helpful, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow it in year 2, I'd really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get in the video. So, Marisa's game plan is going to primarily revolve around, or at the first level, revolve around what might be the best move in the entire game, which is Gladius. The reason this is good is because it shuts down a lot of what people want to do in neutral, so it's really good against stuff like just walk up mid poke, right? And that's if you charge it or you don't charge it, right? That's if you use light or heavy or whatever. And it's also really good against these mid-range fireballs, right? And this is the range where fireballs are usually the best thing to do. And Gladius, if you charge it, just sort of blows it up, right? So at low levels, people might still try to play just kind of that basic game plan, and you're going to be able to get away a lot with just throwing out Gladius and charging Gladius. But at higher levels, people sort of go, okay, Marisa wants to Gladius. What do I do to get around it? And there's really 3 basic strategies that people do. The first is just they might try to time a jump to get over it. The response to this is simple, right? We just wait and anti-air. The other 2 are a little more involved. So the 2 options we're going to explore in depth today are them aggressing forward with lows. What are our options against that? And what do we do if they're trying to play back and whiff punish, right? So if we're going to construct a total neutral game plan, we need to look at how to beat those options. So let's do that. If our opponent is trying to beat our Gladius by doing walk forward into a low, we have a couple different options. First being stand heavy kick. If it hits, we get a giant combo that'll put them in the corner from almost anywhere on the screen. Another option, walk back, play patient, react to the whiff, into combo, into Oki. Third option, stick out buffers to catch them walking forward. All right, stop their offense before it gets started. And lastly, we can throw out Superman punch. Okay, now I want to look at each of those options individually, look at their strengths and weaknesses, why you might want to pick one or the other. So let's look more at stand heavy kick. So this is really strong, obviously, because you saw the reward you get on punish counter. Gigantic damage, right? Pretty drive, conservative, 40% for only 3 bars without spending any super meter is a lot. Corner carry is tremendous, right? But what's it weak to? Why wouldn't you want to do this? Well, it's going to lose pretty hard if they are trying to jump over Gladius or just are jump happy and neutral. I don't really have time to anti-air this. And obviously, right, if I'm super wrong, I can get hit by the jump in. It's going to lose the DI in neutral, right? Super long recovery, not cancelable, not a good option. It's also going to lose to them just sort of waiting and trying to whiff punish, right? Now, that being said, if they're playing, a little slower, they're just trying to maybe walk and block a little bit without throwing the lows right away, this can be okay, because it can deal some solid drive damage if they block it. If it hits them walking forward, you get some damage, right? And if you are right and they press a low, they just explode when it hits them. So this is what you're going to want to pick if the opponent's being a little more patient, right? A little more grounded, a little more patient, but they are still trying to walk forward at you, right? So that's when you'd want to pick this option. So let's take a look at walk back and wait for the whiff. So this is really good because it allows you to play patiently and just react to stuff, right? So it allows you to react to jump ins, allows you to react to raw DI, right? All kind of those silly, stupid neutral options that might blow up some of your other stuff. This is good against, right? It's also really good if your opponent's being extremely predictable, right? Whoops. Like if they just walk forward the same amount all the time and you know exactly the range that they want to be in when they push it. You're like, if they always walk forward to this spacing and then they push it, you're like, okay, I'll let you. I'll just walk back and force you to whiff, right? It's also good because if they decide to play back, you don't really lose anything, right? If they decide to just sort of walk back to try to whiff punish Gladius or stand heavy kick or whatever, you don't really lose anything, right? You're not really taking any risks. However, this can be bad if they're playing sort of this just grounded walk and block style, because our back walk speed is not very good. So a couple things. One, if we're waiting for a whiff and it just never comes, we're giving up screen positioning, so we're getting closer to the corner. But also, because our back walk speed is so slow, they're also getting closer all the time, right? So eventually, they're so close that we can't get out of the range of the 2MK, the crouch medium kick, right? So you have to sort of make a decision eventually, right? So this is something you want to use if your opponent's playing really aggressive, maybe more rush down. They're not playing that patient, that cautious, right? They're trying to just bully you. Generally, it's not good to just let yourself get bullied, right? You want to take some steps against it. On to the next option. So the next strategy you want to look at is buffers. Obviously, this is good if they like to walk forward a little too much, or you just react to walk forward. You're trying to check the movement because you don't want to get bullied, right? Like we talked about the last strategy, you don't want to get bullied, so you just sort of throw out a buffer, crouch medium punch. You catch them walking forward, pressing a button. And again, this kind of forces them to play a little more patiently. Another strength of this is if they're looking to like whiff punish your Gladius. This is a lot faster than Gladius, so you can do stuff like crouch medium punch, stand heavy kick, right? Boom, boom, right? They react to you twitching. They think, oh, that was the thing I was looking for, and they kind of pay a big price for it. Now, obviously, you can't be super predictable with it because if they're being patient, they're not walking forward that much. It is fairly whiff punishable, so you have to be careful anytime you throw out a buffer, right? Because people can take advantage of it if you're too predictable, but some opponents are just going to go, no, they're going to do Gladius. I need to do this one thing. So you can sort of farm them with crouch medium punch, stand heavy kick, or crouch medium punch, drive rush, buffered behind it. Last option to beat them walking forward lows are various strengths of Superman punch. So the strength of this option really is that it has a bunch of range. Even light, heavy has a ton of range, but has a ton of range, so it's really hard to space around accidentally, right? If they're just trying to stay out of light Gladius range, it's gonna be very hard to also stay out of Superman punch range. It jumps over fireballs, which it can punish pretty hard. Right, so it's sort of a good option in that, right? It's very hard to avoid. Does half a bar drive gauge damage on block. It's plus on block, so they don't really want to mash, right? It has a lot going for it. Now, is it like the easiest thing in the world to time it to go over lows? I mean, you have to do it preemptively, right? Like you're not like, oh, they walked forward, I'm gonna do phalanx now, right? That's not how it works. It's sort of like, okay, this is the strategy they've been picking, I'm going to do it. But the nice thing is if you're at the right range, it has so much forward range that even if they're like walking back to try to whiff punish Gladius, the Superman punch will usually hit them. So we're going to look at that actually as a strategy against backwalk as well. Spoiler alert. Weaknesses of it, it's kind of slow, especially medium and heavy are going to be very susceptible to DI, right? Where light, it's a lot easier to time it to be safe. Or it's a lot harder to do a DI fast enough to punish it, right? And again, they can react with stuff like jab or DPs or supers, right? They can anti-air it because obviously you can't block. So it can be risky, but they have to be looking for phalanx specifically, and if they're looking for phalanx specifically, they're probably not looking for stuff like Gladius or the strategies that you're going to use if they're trying to outspace your Gladius, which we're going to look at next. So the second common strategy that people will use a lot of times to try to get around Gladius is they'll want to play like at this range where they're just outside the range of where most of your Gladius, maybe charged heavy you'll still hit, or they'll play it like this range, just try to goad you into letting one rip and then try to whiff punish it, right? So what are the options you have to combat that? Well, the first thing is this walk up towards heavy kick into like Gladius. Does a bar drive gauge damage, on hit it leads to a knockdown, and it sets up a very strong spacing trap, which I made a video about. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. Another option, we can get into this range. We can do like drive rush into buttons, right? If the reactions are really good, we can do drive rush lights, right? Does some drive gauge damage or leads to plus frames, right? But what's nice about this light punch target combo is that sets up the same spacing trap as the towards heavy kick into like Gladius, right? So once again, pretty rewarding. If the reactions aren't very good, we can do like drive rush into heavy punch and then mix them up with throw or jab. Another option, if they're trying to play just outside of Gladius range, is light phalanx, right? Light Superman punch is also very good just because there's so much forward movement, right? If they're trying to space, this is the range. Let's see, the very tip range for charge heavy Gladius should be like right around here. So if we step back a little bit, this should whiff now. Like that, yep. What you'll notice is that's also sort of just the very tippity tip of light phalanx, but if we step forward just a little bit, they block it. So they can't really space around Superman punch and Gladius at the same time. So if they're just trying to play just at the tip of this, they end up having to block this, okay? So that's also strong. Fourth option is just going to be don't push, right? If they're wanting to walk back and whiff punish, just walk forward and block. Walk and block, just incrementally. Push them to the corner, you get them there, all of a sudden, they can't get out of this range, they want to jump, we get a knockdown. Now we're not playing neutral, you know, now they have to guess and we kill them for it. But we need to look, once again, at each of kind of the interplay between our options and what they could pick when we want to pick each of these. So let's do that now. So the first of these strategies I want to talk about is this walk forward heavy kick, right? We've already addressed why it's good. Does a lot of drive gauge damage, sets up a spacing trap, pushes them towards the corner, right? It's also good because you don't have to commit to the Gladius. You can just drive rush cancel and set up a 50-50 between command grab and another towards heavy kick. Or you can do crouch medium punch and set up a 50-50 between throw and low. It's also good because you can hit confirm it. I haven't really practiced this a ton, but you can hit confirm this with heavy slam and get a full combo. So those are some of the strengths. Why wouldn't you want to do this? Well, one reason you wouldn't want to do this is that it's slow. So they can kind of check it, right? They see you walking forward, they push jab, and obviously it's hard to time with the CPU, but if they just see you walking forward, they push crouch jab, you get counter hit, and all of a sudden, our offense is over, right? So it's kind of risky that way. This is going to be an option you want to pick if they're being kind of especially passive, just looking for you to charge Gladius. Like, I'm sure you've all seen it, you know, like Akumas love to walk back and then just hit heavy kick, and Kens like to walk back, hit heavy punch, try to whiff punish you Gladius. Same idea. If they're playing where it's like, you know, that's what they're looking for, just taking up a little bit of space, walk forward with towards heavy kick into Gladius, does some drive gauge damage, pushes them towards the corner. It can be a good option, but you have to be careful because if they're playing aggressive at all, their option's probably going to win just because this is pretty dang slow. So the next option we want to look at is this idea of drive rush. Okay, so obviously the strength here is plus frames, right? And with plus frames, you can get, you know, some cheeky stuff, right? You can go for command grabs. If they like to walk back, you can go for charge sweeps, right? It's not necessarily about frame trapping them. It's about getting in their face and just bullying them, right? If you want to play passive, fine. It's going to cost you drive gauge, right? If you want to play passive, fine. Play passive. I'm going to force you to push buttons. That's the idea, right? You get away with, okay, I'm going to do stuff that has gigantic gaps, not because I think it's going to counter hit you, right? But because I know that you're not going to push, because I know the only thing you're really concerned with is not getting hit by this or is whiff punishing this, right? So it's like, okay, if you want to play super passively, we can play passively, right? Now, from this range, it's pretty good. It's going to be a little slower than towards heavy kick, right? But it's still a really good option. From further away, it takes longer, right? And they can obviously check stuff. So doing something like, you'd have to do something like drive rush heavy punch. And obviously, that's a pretty slow action. But if you're playing against somebody that you know is just looking for this, and they're not looking for any sort of forward movement at all, they're just looking for you to charge the Gladius to whiff punish it, then honestly, it's risky, but I don't think it's like too risky to do, right? You don't want to play this. Again, if they're playing a little more actively, if you can tell that they're not just looking for it, then at this range, drive rush is bad. But if they're, if you're at this range and you think they're trying to, backdash, just walk back your Gladius and try to get out of it, then just giving them a burst option that's a forward movement thing that leads to plus frames, I think is a pretty good choice. If they're playing further away, maybe don't do it, unless, of course, like I said, that all they're looking for is this. And that's going to be more of a thing at lower levels of play rather than, the upper levels of play, but that's still the idea. So the third option we talked about, Superman Punch. This doesn't really have different strengths or weaknesses than it did when you use it, against them walking forward. But the difference is, instead of going, okay, I'm going to hop over low and punish counter you, it's just, okay, you want to play at this range outside of Gladius? Fine, I'm going to make you block something. And the idea is, hey, if they're just looking for this or this is just another thing to take up the mental stack, so that they have to consider, okay, this also leads to plus frames, right? And it has more range. So if you're going to try to play around my Gladius, I'm just going to jump at you with Superman Punch, do some drive gauge, push you to the corner, B+ in your face. What are you going to do about it, right? Don't play slow. Play aggressive. I want you to play aggressive. And that really is true. Marisa, she doesn't want people to play aggressive, right here. She doesn't want to have to eat that. But she does want people to be pushing buttons, because that's where the damage comes in, right? And that's one of the things about this, is this forces them to consider, oh, I need to look for that. And then you can get away with drive rush. And then you can get away with charging Gladius again, right? So this is really just, okay, they're playing passive. They're trying to walk back. They're playing outside the range of this. They're playing in a range where you're not sure that'll be good or they can check it. That's where you throw out Superman Punch, right? You don't want to do this, again, you don't want to do this if this is all you're doing, right? This is a very good option to throw in no matter what they're doing, because it beats a lot of the stuff they'll do. Walk back fireball, walk forward low, walk back wait for Gladius to whiff, right? This is a good option. It's just not a good option if this is the only thing you're doing. You have to mix it up with drive rush and towards heavy kick, right? And just what our next strategy is going to be. So the last strategy I want to talk about is this idea of just walk forward into nothing, into block, walk and block. Kind of cheating to say this is like a fourth separate strategy, because really what this is the default thing you should be doing, and then observing how they're playing, right? And mixing up your other approach options with it, right? You walk forward, you're like, okay, are they playing super passively? When I walk forward, do they push a button? If they don't, do this. Right? When I walk forward, do they push a button? Oh, they do? Okay, then I can, maybe try to counter poke them or something. Or they walk forward, I push a button, okay, I'm going to do this. Or when I walk forward, they push a button, then I'm going to do something like that and try to whiff punish their check, right? I'm going to do something slower or whatever. But the main idea here is this is mixed in with all the other three options, right? So you don't want to just go like, okay, I'm just going to, oh, you're playing back and passively, I'm just going to keep throwing Superman punches. You're playing back and passively, I'm just going to do this. Oh, right? That's not what you're looking for. You're going, okay, I'm going to play slow. I'm going to walk in and do nothing to force you to play fast. And then when you play fast, now all of a sudden, we can get back into this range where, guess what? You got to do with Gladius, baby. And that's the entirety of the point. Right? Marisa is this character who, she has these tools, phalanx, drive rush, towards heavy kick, right? She has these tools that can chunk away drive gauge, do a lot of mental damage, push people to the corner, but she really, at the end of the day, wants to play slow, right? Wants to play slow to force the opponent to make mistakes, right? And she has these options where it's like, okay, if I walk forward and you're going to do nothing, then I will just bully your drive gauge with DPs, with towards heavy kicks. I'll get free plus frames, and I'll go for stuff like this, right? And she can do that, and it's pretty dang effective. but it's really built around observing the opponent and making sure that they're going to respect you walking forward. And the way you do that is by walking forward into nothing, and then when they check it, you whiff punish them and they eat 50%, and the next time they go, ooh, I don't want to do that, and you go like here. Or you walk forward and they poke with a medium, you know, a mid, Luke hits crouch medium punch or stand medium kick or something, and then you go, okay, if you want to do that when I get in this range, I'm just going to walk forward into Gladius, and we're back to square one. So in conclusion, in summary, Marisa's neutral is kind of this. So are they playing normal? Do they want to just walk up with mid pokes, throw fireballs in mid range? Right? What do we do then? We Gladius them until they stop. Right? That's the idea. We just Gladius until they stop doing that. Okay? Now Gladius doesn't work. Why isn't it working anymore? Is it not working because they've decided to walk up and push low forward? Well, then we got plenty of options to do with that. We got stand heavy kick. We got Superman punch. We can just walk back, wait for it to whiff punish them. We can buffer and try to check their forward walk. Right? Or is Gladius not working because they are staying just outside of the range? Right? Well, then we got stuff to do with that too. We can do walk forward towards heavy kick. We can do drive rush into button. We can do Superman punch to make them block it, push them to the corner, steal some plus frames. Or we can just walk forward, play patient, wait for them to make a mistake, and capitalize. Hopefully this is helpful. As always, have a good time.